Hi guys, today I want to talk about meal planning. As we start a new school year, this is the perfect time to reassess your meal planning strategy. What I see with a lot of women is they picture meal planning as scrolling through Pinterest, getting a bunch of new ideas, trying to be creative, trying to mix things up, pulling from this creative space and then trying to fit it all together, when in reality that doesn't fit with the time that they have available to prepare meals, their kids' preferences for foods, their schedule for the week. There are a lot of other factors that come into play here. So really, going to Pinterest should be the final step after you have already assessed a lot of other factors, or roadblocks is really what I would call them. So as we think about creating a meal plan, the first step that you really need to do is sit down with your calendar and assess how many meals you need to make for the week, how many people you're serving, when you're going to be able to go grocery shopping, and how long you need to draw out the food that you're preparing. So some people can go grocery shopping every Sunday afternoon, and that works really well for their family and their schedule. Some people, myself included, go grocery shopping anywhere from every 5 days to 10 days. It really depends on my schedule. So these are factors that we need to be considering before we can pin down a very specific meal. So when we think about how many meals we're preparing and then looking at any additional factors, like maybe your kiddo has a friend coming over for dinner, maybe you're hosting your in-laws for dinner, maybe you're going out to eat for dinner one night, so but that's a free space. Taking into account your schedule is really the best place to start. Then breaking that down even further, looking at the weather for the week. Just quickly pulling up the weather app. Nothing is more frustrating than when you want to grill out for the night and then it's raining. Or if you plan a salad for dinner and then it ends up being really dreary and overcast outside and your body's just really craving warmth and nourishment from soup. So the weather, honestly, if you look at it ahead of time, you can leverage that and plan your meals accordingly. So taking into account your schedule, first of all, the weather, then we also want to look at, different time constraints that you may be under, and meals that are really going to fit into your schedule or the space that you have provided. So for example, if you have a kiddo that's in an extracurricular activity and you're going straight from school pickup to the activity and you won't be home until it's time to eat, you're going to need a crock pot meal, or you're going to need an Instant Pot, or you're going to need leftovers from the night before. And so planning on that ahead of time is a game changer for you. That way you're not dealing with hangry kids in the car and being coerced into a drive-through option if you really don't want to be dependent on the drive-through option for your family. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but if you're too dependent, we might want to try to scale that back. So looking at any nights that you might be working late, or that your spouse might be working late, those extracurricular activities for kiddos. For me in the past, we've had seasons where my husband has commuted to a different city, and so I varied my nights. Like if he was commuting one night, that was an easy meal for me, but the next day he'd be working remotely from home, so I could count on him to help me with dinner, and alternating. That was a rhythm that we had about a year ago. So looking at your schedule and the time that you actually have available to prepare a meal. That can also include, if you're a stay-at-home mom and you can count on your kiddo taking a consistent nap, maybe you use that nap time. And then, are there any other times in your day when you can prepare or just chop vegetables or anything to kind of get ahead of it. So really, when you become a master of your schedule and of your time, your meal planning is going to get easier, I promise. Okay, then the next idea for you to consider is alternating your proteins. So planning around your proteins has really helped me narrow down more specific meals and keep a wide variety. So we typically alternate between beef, pork, and chicken with some sort of like salmon or shrimp option every week or two. And then I would say turkey maybe once or twice a month, kind of depending. That's just not a protein that I grew up cooking with a lot, and I'm not overly familiar with. Don't have a lot of recipes in my back pocket with turkey. So, when I sit down to plan my meals, it's really like, okay, I will have 30 minutes to prepare dinner, and this needs to be a beef night. What recipes fit into those categories? Instead of the alternative, like I started off with, of going to Pinterest and finding something like like a chicken piccata that's gonna take me an hour and is chicken, and then I end up having chicken back-to-back nights. So those are really the key points to consider as you try to become a master at meal planning is your schedule, the weather, any time constraints that are going to get in your way, and alternating your proteins so that you're consistently mixing those up and not being too heavily reliant on one key source of protein. Another thing for you to consider is always having what I call buffers in your kitchen, which I pulled out a buffer for today, to be honest. I sent my daughter off to school this morning, and when I planned my meal plan for the week, I had a crock pot meal in mind, and I forgot to pull out the roast last night to let it defrost. So my buffer meal is typically, I always have frozen chicken in the house. We always have deep freezers full of pork and beef as well, so my proteins are readily available. And then I always keep pasta noodles. Not that we eat pasta often, but it's my back pocket buffer meal. So tonight I pulled out, it was around lunchtime. I realized for tonight I needed to pull out chicken and bacon, and I'm gonna make a pasta dish with those. So that's one of my back pocket buffer meals. And as you lean into this type of meal planning that starts with structure and your schedule instead of a bunch of other people's ideas and creativity, which those have their own place as well. It's just not going to give you the sustainability and consistency that you need to meet your health goals if you're trying to be overly creative to start with, if that makes sense. So those are some meal planning tips. Again, we're going to go back to our schedule. We're going to go back to the amount of time that we have available to us. And then one other key thing that I usually consider is if there's anywhere I can get help. So that might look like your partner has like one meal that they really just nail it every time, and maybe you pencil that in every couple of weeks so that you have the night off. Or maybe you always go out to family dinner on Sunday so that you go to bed with a clean kitchen and a fresh slate going into a new week. Maybe you work out a deal with your neighbors where every other Tuesday you cook for them, but then they take turns cooking for you. So building in that support system is also another key thing to keep in mind. But overall, when it comes to meal planning, these are like my tried and true tricks that I wanted to share with you guys as we start a new school year, because I know this energy is really exciting and it's sometimes almost too exciting, and you can get overzealous and try to do all the things when really we need to get back to basics. So stick to your schedule, really narrow down those time constraints that you have, and be realistic with what you can accomplish. Rotate your proteins. That's how you're going to get variety, because you'll plan your meals according to the protein for the night. And then lean on help when you can, and come up with those buffer meals, things that you always have in the pantry that in a pinch you can just pull those out when needed. And I hope that these tips and tricks serve you well for the school year.